Hello, everyone. Welcome. And welcome to Aging and Spirituality. And this is where two yoga devotees examine how to really live a more fulfilled life. And we're sharing with you from our hearts. So today, our subject is discovering how to see the doors that are opening in a crisis rather than just the doors that are shutting. We're going to be examining the reactions that keep us stuck in difficult situations and the kinds of things that we can do to see the wins instead. You know, sometimes we get so stuck on what's going wrong, we don't see the opportunities.
Right.
Most people just get so preoccupied with the doors that are closing. Winston Churchill said, "Never let a good crisis go to waste." Now, do you believe that? I know there was a time in my life when I didn't, but I have certainly learned that every issue we have, there's an opportunity at the end, there's an opportunity to grow and an opportunity to move forward. That's why it comes into our life. Lives are full of crises. Especially as we get older. But the reality is that even in the hardest of times, there's opportunities if we look for them. And that's one of the problems, we don't look for them. It has a lot to do with our reactions. And so we're going to share a little bit about different reactions and how you can make some shifts. I'm going to share with you my daughter's process when something comes up. She has an issue and she starts coming up with everything that could possibly go wrong in that particular issue in her immediate environment in the world. She just goes down kind of like this dark tunnel. And it's a pretty common reaction for a lot of people. Now, the one thing I've learned is that people need the space to go there. If I come in too soon with something positive, she's going to, no. She has to have a chance to go through this process, to go through every possible dark scenario. And then when she's gone pretty far down, then I'll say, well, have you thought about, how you can grow up from this, or what opportunity there is, or what you can look for, and there's usually a shift. And an example was, she was wanting to get pregnant. She's 47, so she's not a kid. And she'd been trying, and she had frozen eggs, and she did an IVF process and it didn't work. And so she started going down that dark tunnel that this is never going to happen, nothing's going to work. Right. And she was getting more and more stressed about it. And finally, and then her fertility doctor said, well, you're ready to try the next cycle, because she could do another cycle of it. And that's when she stopped and realized that something was amiss inside her. And so it was time to take a different look at this. And so instead of continuing to go down the tunnel and stressing and pushing against it, she decided to take a couple of months off from this process. They took time off work. They went to Mexico where they're going to have their wedding. And she started journaling. And in the process of journaling, she wrote down all the things that within her that she thought were inhibiting this process.
Well, there you go. She got into what was calling her in the first place, right?
Right.
That inner self was called, like, I hope I'm not interrupting the story. Please come back to it. But whenever I think about crisis, and I deal with people that feel like they're in crisis, it's because typically they don't pay attention to the inner self. And so the life will, tweak you in the back of the head first, trying to get your attention, and then maybe take like a soft, pool thing and hit you, and the next time it's going to be a baseball bat across the head. It's like, that's how I ended up having a heart attack and going into, my experience, right? Because I wasn't paying attention to what was going on inside of me. And I was at a very critical life process. I was at, you go either this way or you go this, you're at a fork in the road, which is what I call the crisis, but for her, it wasn't as aggressive or violent a procedure. She was just deciding, this was going to happen for her. She had that intention. She knew she wanted it. She knew it was possible. And then she knew there was that period where she had to go internal, find out what was going on inside of there. And that, God bless that little baby. That was her first gift to her mom, helped her, really figure out what she needed to do in that case. And it's really softened her and made her much more introspective and calmer,
Yeah, much calmer. Yeah. And that was the process. She went back after doing her journalism and realizing that she had thought she wasn't ready, and now she was.
Right.
Now she was ready. And so she went back, did the second round, took time off work, so she was relaxed, and it worked.
Right.
And now in that first couple of months, I mean, she did get pregnant from it. In that first couple of months, you have to be very careful when you've done, IVF.
Right.
So she has a number of friends. Comes to another point I want to bring up about when we're in a crisis. She has friends who were going through this process, who had miscarriages and all these horror stories they were telling her. And that was one of the things they said to her: stay away from them.
Right.
Stay away from them. And that's really important when you're in a crisis. Stay away from negative people, because they don't mean it, but they're going to take you down. When we learned to drive in driver training, they taught us that courtesy is contagious. Well, emotions are contagious too. So if people are around you with all these negative emotions, it's going to take you there. And she did that. She stayed away from, and she in fact told one of her friends, she said, look, if you're going to talk to me about your miscarriages and your problems, she said, I think it's better we just don't talk for a while.
Wow. See how much this process helped her grow?
Yeah.
Like immensely. And you couldn't do it for her, like listeners, you got to understand, as parents, and most of you are, and you've been through this, you want so much for your kids, and you think, especially when, you've been doing things that you've practiced your whole life and they really work for you, you want desperately to be able to give those gifts to your children. Guess what? Those twits don't want to hear what we have to say. We laugh about this all the time, because our kids go through stuff, and we can help them, but we are the last people they want to come and talk to.
They're the last one.
But what you were saying about, not getting in the energy of negative people is so important, because it's so easy for people like us who are very empathic to get in the way of people that, now the term is somebody who's an energy vampire. It's literally just people who are really sucking off your positive nature because they don't feel good. They want to feel good, and they're trying to suck off your energy. But it's also to, like what I saw with your baby when she was growing through this, is that she was learning how to create her connection to inner self, right? And when you start to go through that process, it's like planting a little tree. Remember that analogy? Planting a little tree is so gorgeous, and you want to take care of it. But guess what? People are going to come by and step on the damn thing. You got to put a fence around it. You got to be careful about who's around you and what the energy is, so that you don't take that on, because you're learning to be in an entirely new space. You're learning to respond differently to yourself and to the world. And you really need to treat that like a baby, like a beginning process that is so sacred and important to you, that you won't let anybody hurt that, step on it or anything.
That's so important. It's so important.
Yeah.
And, because we can get into an emotional turmoil there.
Right.
And there are other things like fear and anger that come up. And if we can get ourselves out of the momentum, and there are some things we can do. I mean, some very simple things. I'll tell you about when a few years ago I got a breast cancer diagnosis. So the guy calls me with my results.
Yep.
And he says, well, it's breast cancer. He says, but the good news is it's very early. Well, you know, that isn't exactly an
That
upbeat.
doesn't help when you
Yeah,
use
it doesn't
the
really help.
word.
You know. So I have a meeting with the breast surgeon the next morning, and I thought I was pretty balanced. So they took my blood pressure is normally, you know, very good and often a little low, right?
Yeah, it's a low. Yeah, me too.
Right. So so they take my blood pressure and it's like through the roof. You know.
They're like, are you a little
And
excited?
the nurse said to me, a little anxious, are we? She said, yeah, she said, don't worry, everybody's like that when they come here.
Yeah.
So I realized at that moment that, you know, there was something I needed to do here, because if I was going to talk to the breast surgeon and hear what she had to say, I needed to center myself.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
though I thought I was fine when I walked in, I obviously wasn't.
Yeah.
And so I did some deep breathing practices. And this is probably one of the best things anyone can do when any kind of crisis comes up. If there's fear or angst in any way, one of the best ways to get yourself out of the momentum. And you know, deep diaphragmatic breathing. You know, just singers do it, athletes do it. People who practice yoga do it all the time. You can do it with a count. Sometimes that makes it easier. The main thing is to do it with the diaphragm. You know,
Right.
like I like to put my hand when I'm in a, you know, bad situation, hand here and a hand here, so I know that I'm feeling the lower, middle, upper.
Hand on your belly, hand on your heart for those who are listening.
You can see, yeah, that's right.
And breathe into your tummy.
Yeah.
But I want you to finish this technique, but I want to say something about that too, is that I notice sometimes even normally I'm not in fear or anything, but I'll get up in the morning and I'll go to do my meditation, and I'll find that just normally I am holding my gut in, just holding it in. Like, what are you doing? You're just sitting, you know, you just sit. What are you doing? It's just a normal practice for me to be holding in my stomach for whatever reason, you know. So it's one of the first things I pay attention to now, is I just focus on that sacral second chakra area. And I, you know, when you're breathing in normally, and people who are singers and speakers and that kind of thing, they've learned how to breathe not from the chest but from the tummy. And if you don't know how to do that, we'll do a whole pod on that, because that is so important. If you're not breathing yogically, you aren't living right. So when you breathe in, your tummy should come out. And I was finding I would breathe in, and although the breath was in that lower part of my body, my tummy was just like still holding on to it. Just like, I'm like, what? That's so uptight, you know, like let it go.
Yeah.
Just breathe in there and let that be like a bellow, you know, just come in and out. And that's oxygenating your whole body. And that's very helpful for getting out of a place of fear, because when you get caught in there, all your muscles get tight, everything gets tensed up. So yeah, so keep talking about the diaphragmatic breathing.
Yeah, so I mean, you could do this anywhere. You know, I mean, I did it while I was waiting for the breast surgeon to come in. You know, just inhale. You want to inhale and exhale through your nose, and just let your abdomen puff out, and then the middle part of your chest and the upper part of your chest, and then just really deep breathing. And I would do a few of those, and then you can even do some where you do a count, where you count to 5, hold your breath for 5, exhale for 5, and then hold it out for 5. That's another thing that is very quick to center you. And once you get, it's almost impossible to stay in a really agitated state if you do that kind of deep breathing for a while. If you notice when you're anxious, your breath is shallow.
Absolutely.
And like you said, you know, you are holding your stomach in. So you want to just let the abdominal area puff out as much as it wants, and just do that deep breathing. And then once you get more centered, you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, I really learned a lot from this experience. And
yeah,
and you know, and that's an important thing too. And I think that's the other point that I want to really make, is that so you can calm yourself down with the breath practice, but sometimes when we get in a crisis, you know, the big thing is anger. We're angry and we flail against it. And whenever there's anger, you want to ask first. You want to just try to do some of that deep breathing and say, what is it I want that I'm not getting? Because anger is always just frustrated desire.
Yeah.
What is it that I
I
want?
wish I remembered that one. I can't tell you how many times I've gone through that with my kid.
Yeah.
Especially guys will get angry and just like off the church. And I'd be like, what in the heck is going on here? And never could understand why I would give him the breathing exercise and it wouldn't work. Somehow he couldn't connect somatically. Somehow he couldn't, allow that to get deep into his body and feel that sensation. I don't know what that was, but it would have been so powerful if he'd been able to say, what's the question again? What is it that I'm not getting that I wanted?
That I want, yeah. What
Yeah.
is it that, what is it I want that I'm not getting, and
Yeah.
and then after you start seeing that, then the next question to really open yourself up to is, what can I learn from this experience? We're having this experience for a reason. And if we can learn and grow from it instead of falling apart,
Right.
There's going to be an opportunity.
Yes.
And I think that's the place right there.
Well, and oftentimes when you're talking about anger, it gets triggered like instantly, and what you have to first calm yourself down, because there's no way you can process what's happening while everything in you is on fire, right? So if you can get yourself to that place of calm, then you've done half the battle. Now you can take a look and think, okay, what was it about that situation that just triggered me? Is that real? Why did I have the response that I had to it? Was my life threatened? Was this my ego just responding to something inside of me that as a misperception of what's really going on in the world, because oftentimes that is what anger is. You've taken something in personal and perceived it as a personal slight, and it had nothing to do with you.
There's nothing.
So when you can identify that, then all of a sudden you go, oh, okay, I can let go of that. Because if I had one wish for the world, it would be that we could get rid of hate and anger, because they do, it does so much damage to people, and oftentimes when you damage somebody like that, you can't take it back. You can't take anger back. It's like that old analogy, you pound a nail into a piece of wood, you may be able to pull that nail out, but that hole is still there. You hurt people so much, hurt relationships, and hurt yourself when you do that kind of stuff. So these are really critical life skills, learning how to deal with your anger and all of those things.
Yeah, and the other thing about anger is you got to get to the place where you can forgive. And that's very, very hard to do when you're in the heat of the moment. But if you can take that step back, with the breathing, with centering, maybe it takes a day or two. But you look at, there's a practice we do. We have the person, you visualize them sitting in front of you. And you say something, I thank you for teaching me. You want to get to that place where you say, this is what I've learned. What have I learned from this situation?
Right.
You open yourself up to what you've learned from it, and then you thank the person for teaching you that.
And that what you just made an important distinction, Chris, because when you have an experience where you have that kind of heat, it's highly unlikely that you're going to be able to fix it on the spot.
No, you can't. You're
going to have to walk away, as calmly and kindly as you can, like, I'm sorry, I don't know what's happening here. I need to take a look at this and I'll get back to you. And then you look at what triggered you and you figure it out and you go, oh, okay, that's because this happened to me years ago. And that's the response that I had. And really wasn't that person's fault. And boy, now I feel like a dunce. I feel bad. I swung out at it. I hurt them for whatever reason. And then you can, I love that process, what you're talking about. Literally, when I have go through that forgiveness process, I will see the person's in my mind's eye and I will just hold my hand out to them. That was something Gurji talked about years ago. hold your hand out to them and send them love from your heart to theirs. And oftentimes when you meet them the next time, all that nonsense will have been gone, was gone.
Right,
you know?
right. Yeah, part of that process is, you say, may the best happen for both of us.
Yes, so the higher will for both of us.
And you want that. You want to get to where you genuinely want that for them. But no, you're not going to do it in the heat of the moment.
Right.
But when you step back, you take a little time and you do that, you free yourself from it. Because as long as you hold on to the anger, you're hurting yourself too.
Well, for the very reason that we just described, because when you get triggered like that, it's typically not the other person.
Yeah.
Something inside of you is you got to go away and figure out what
it is
just happened.
Yeah.
So if you don't forgive, you're doubly hurting yourself, hurting somebody else, but you're stopping from understanding what's going on inside yourself. And that's why probably the situation happened in the first place. Take that as an opportunity to learn what's going on inside of you, even if it's painful, even if it's, feels like so contrary to your nature. There's something there that you need to know. And every time you open the door to that kind of understanding, you transform, you become a better person.
Yeah, and I think that's the one of our big points today is look for the opportunities for growth.
Yes.
Because they're always there. And, if you fail, if you get into a crisis and you make the wrong choices, be kind to yourself.
Yes.
Because everybody fails sometimes. And, that's how you learn. And people who are afraid of failure never grow. And
it's so true. Let me give you a great example. Like I feel like, we talked about my book. I'm not trying to sell my book. I'm trying to say that when I was writing the book, Always Choose Love, what I was trying to say is what yogis and other practitioners have been saying forever. Always come from a place of love, divine love in your heart. You can't go wrong that way. But I have taken on this new gig, and I find that when I'm working with people that are limited in their ability to be able to produce because their consciousness just can't understand how it's possible. It's so clear to me that all I got to do is go tick, 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 and these things the slots will fill in and what I want will happen. But I've got all these people that are running the race for me, and I got to figure out how to get them to catch the baton. So that's my challenge in a leadership, quote unquote, position, is to be able to line up the team and get them to run the race and get them to, toss the baton to each other. You know what I'm saying? But I find that the energy of that old person inside of me comes up, that old, aggressive, will-centered person wants to get on the motorcycle and just right by everybody. I know where I'm going. See you later. Just keep going, get the job done. But that's not the point. I've been put in this place to help these people become better at what they do and to grow into a team that is a company that can really enjoy each other, so these challenges of what you're talking about never stop. They just become more refined, and you have to get better at them all the time.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it. And I think another thing that's really important is make sure your actions are aligned with your values. Because sometimes when we get into crisis mode, we're not thinking, we want to move very quickly. And it's always good. I mean, if somebody's hit by a car on the road, that's a different kind of crisis. I mean, you call for help immediately, you immediately act. But most of the crises in our lives, we can just take a moment and try to be sure that our actions are aligned with our values, that we're not just scrambling, because that happens to people a lot. They do and say things that they're very sorry for later.
Right. Well, I don't know if you have an example of that, but I think I just gave mine, which is that it's easy for me to be a producer. It's easy for me to get work done. I know how to do things instinctively, but for me, I value how I treat people. So I have to stop what I do. I have to change my actions
Yes.
of how I respond, how I handle the job, certainly how I interact with other people in
Mhm.
order to express that value of caring about them. They have to be incorporated, right?
Right.
So, maybe you have another example of people aligning their actions with their values, but that's a good example right there.
That's a perfect example. And that's where people often get into trouble when they feel like there's a crisis in their work, for example, and they'll start walking on other people,
Right.
and
That happens at work a lot.
yeah, or pointing the finger at them, and that's never the solution.
Yeah.
I remember when my daughter was little and learning parent effectiveness training, and one of the main things I remember out of that is, to every problem there's a solution where nobody loses, where everybody
Nobody
wins.
loses.
Everybody
What was that?
wins.
What kind of training was that?
Parent effectiveness training.
Parent effectiveness.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
okay.
yeah, to every conflict, there's a solution where everybody wins. And that's part of it. I mean, like, you're helping people, and if you're starting this company, and if you're pushing forward, and you've got to be
Leaving everybody behind.
yeah, you can't leave them all behind. You got to be able to bring them with you in a
Yes.
kind way, in a way that they feel okay.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And-
And if for anybody out there that is that type A personality like me,
Mhm.
you will relate to how it feels to have to pedal back, to pull yourself back and go,
Hmm.
okay, Kathy, you're not being lazy. You're just learning to bring the others along with you. There is a
Yeah.
patience and a growth and an understanding that comes between that. And then you do pass into a place where you're like happy that you can do something that's effective for these people, that helps them become better at what they do, and then you have changed as a person, because now the end goal isn't so much about, making $1 million or whatever it is. It's about how you've influenced these people's lives, how you've kind of coached them, you've kind of, loved them into a place where they never thought they'd be able to get before.
Yeah, how you took the journey together.
Yes.
And yeah, that's really the key right there.
Right there, yeah. It
Yeah.
is. Yay.
Well, I hope this has been helpful for folks. So
Yes. But please let us know if you have questions about it, because this is a deep one, and we'll probably talk about similar ideas in the future. But let us know. Chris is at yogacenter.org, and I'm at kathylee-taylor.com. You can always send us questions. We're happy to answer them. And if you have suggestions about what you would like to talk about, if you send your questions, and we're happy to develop some podcasts around that.
Thank you, and have a great
everyone.
rest of your day or evening. Bye.
Yes. Bye for now.